Hello, welcome back. So, uh, I recently had a time since I don't know, several months where I've cut off secular music, and I guess you could say that ended semi-recently because I did allow myself listen to some secular music one day, but I haven't listened to some since, so knows. And there's just been, I've kind of had thoughts about the times when I've cut off secular music or some secular music, and those thoughts have been kind of just rolling around in my head for some time, and there hasn't been a good time to bring it up in real life to people. The only times I've said any of these thoughts was over Instagram DM to someone I follow on Instagram. And it was getting at least one of those thoughts out to someone finally that inspired me to make this video. And yeah, to see, kind of talk about the thoughts I've had about the times that say, that I've cut off secular music. All right. So, but before we get into that, I want to give a little disclaimer. This video is not to say whether you should or shouldn't listen to secular music. I believe that when it comes to this topic, it's best to stick with your convictions. But one thing I do want to make clear that I think a lot of people should consider is that if there's biblically room for Christians to have different convictions on something, we should respect that. So, and you should not, and if you don't have scripture to back it up, you shouldn't chastise someone for having different convictions. All right, is that clear? All right, so let's get into it. All right, so the main thought that has kind of been rolling around there is thinking about the times when I've cut off secular music or some secular music, but because there have been some times when I've cut off some secular music and not all of it. Like there was one time where I randomly deleted my Olivia Rodrigo songs off of my playlist, but then there were other secular songs still on that playlist. So when I think back to the times when I've cut off secular music or some secular music, it hasn't been because I've truly felt convicted about the songs that I was listening to, but rather some Christians, mainly online, saying that secular music is bad. That is what's been motivating me to do that. Now, that's not a good thing to admit because I know, and you all should know, that just because a Christian says something, it doesn't mean that it's right. And the Bible calls us to test everything, and that is true. But if I'm being honest, the only times where I feel the need to test something is when something sounds off, and then that's when I'm like, when I wanted to test things. And then oftentimes I don't even like test it. Sometimes it's just like, okay, that sounds off. Now I'm gonna take whatever this person says with a grain of salt. It's not a good way to be, but I mean, I can't be the only one, right? So yeah, and we're gonna talk about like the kind of Christians that are saying this kind of stuff a little bit later. So yeah, the time, as I said, the time, oftentimes when I've cut up secular music, it hasn't been because of actual conviction. Well, actually, the first time that I truly cut off secular music, like all secular music, was after I had a psychotic break. And I mean, I can't speak for everyone who's been in that situation, but for me, when you're in that headspace, things that when you look back on it later that like sound weird and don't make sense, you start to believe them when you're in that mind space. And I remember, while in that time, I didn't really want to listen to any music because I'd kind of thought it was demonic. And some people would say like, "Well, yeah, because secular music is demonic, blah blah blah." But you don't get it. I didn't even want to listen to most Christian music either. So yeah, it's just like I thought all music was like not that good, or like I don't remember exactly, but and I remember the first song, or at least one of the first songs that I allowed myself to listen to was a song based on Psalm 5 because I thought, oh well, this is just singing scripture. So yeah, which I realized later that songs based on psalms, they're oftentimes they have to change some of the words a little bit to like make it work in a song. So well, that's fine, but that's not exactly singing straight scripture. So, yeah. Another thing I've realized about some of the times when I've cut off secular music or some secular music, it's because there's often been deeper issues, other actual convictions that I know I should deal with, but I don't want to deal with those, so I'll just look to like fix anything else other than those issues, right? So, don't have much more to say on that because it's kind of like oh, I don't want to I don't want to deal with this issue, but I'll look to Christian content or look to anything, and I'll address anything else, and then hopefully if I address that, then God will still be pleased with me. Of course, that's not how God works. So yeah, that's one thing to consider. And I've also thought of the times when I was listening to secular music, and well, maybe not right when I started listening to secular music, but for like a good amount of time that I was listening to it, I would usually be pretty careful about the songs I allowed myself to listen to. Like it got to a point where if I'd heard a song that I liked, I would look at the lyrics and I would search for swears, or if there wasn't swears, but there was the lyrics were questionable, then I wouldn't listen to that song. Now, of course, there were some times where if a song had questionable stuff but no swears, I would still listen to it. Or if the song did have swears, I would look up a clean version. So even though I was trying to be careful, I will admit there were some songs that I probably shouldn't have been listening to, and I'm starting to wonder if like maybe there wouldn't be this whole thing around Christians listening to secular music if Christians were more careful about what secular songs they allowed themselves to listen to, right? And if the problem here is lyrical content, because I mean, while some people may disagree, it's pretty established that like the music itself is not inherently the sounds not inherently good or bad. But if the lyrical content is the problem, and a secular song is lyrically not bad, what's the problem? Now, again, if you feel convicted about it, then fine. But if your fellow Christian does not feel convicted about it, and there's not something inherently wrong with that song, what's the problem? So, yeah, and then one thing I've heard some Christians say is like, oh, but then it's worldly, and the Bible tells us to not associate with anything that's worldly, and like all these things. But the thing that I've learned that I feel like a lot of Christians don't understand about worldly is that worldly biblically doesn't mean anything that's not explicitly Christian. Worldly has these certain characteristics that are found in First John. You probably know this phrase: lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And while that would certainly describe a lot of secular music, it doesn't describe all of it. So, and I guess with this point, the one thing I want to get across is to the Christians who speak out about secular music, are they taking into account that some Christians who listen to secular music are trying to be careful about the songs that they listen to? That's just something to consider. Now we're going to talk about kind of Christians that speak out against secular music. So I've noticed that the people who are like telling Christians to like not listen to secular music, they all seem like the same type of Christian. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of just more like the same type just comes from like the vibe I get from them, because like oftentimes these Christians popping up, I don't know much about them. So like a lot of the people speaking out about this are like unfamiliar to me. Like I haven't seen someone that I know is solid speaking out against all secular music. So yeah, that's another thing. Like so, it's like these people that come out speaking against secular music, although this isn't usually the first thought that comes to mind. It's kind of like, who are you? Like, how do I know I should take you seriously? How do I know that you haven't just gone from one extreme to the other? Or how do I know you're not trying to just run from your past experiences? Like this is the things we gotta take into consideration. And then these Christians, when they point to Christian music as an alternative, it's kind of like as if Christian music doesn't have its own problems. Like, I mean, I know, and not just like, oh, the music all sounds the same or it's all bad, which that actually is a problem. But no, there's more serious problems, like the amount of Christian artists who have left the faith, the Christian artists who have embraced unbiblical ideas, the lyrics themselves of Christian songs being theologically weak and basic. And also one thing to keep in mind is that especially when it comes to like CCM, that Christian music industry isn't really separate from the secular music industry. So, well, not a lot of people talk about that either. And the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about is the difference between conviction and guilt because of something else. So, there's there's a difference between truly feeling convicted about something and then just feeling guilt because you see a lot of people speaking out against it and you're like, oh, maybe, like what is this really to me? Maybe I should just but that's not like feeling guilt because of what other Christians say isn't really the same thing as feeling convicted about things. Or again, like briefly touched on, feeling guilt because you've got deeper issues going on. So yes, that's the difference. So what I would ask people seeing all this thing is ask yourself, is this truly conviction or is this just guilt because of what other Christians are saying or because I've got deeper issues and all that. So yeah, think about that. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say, so yeah, don't get me wrong, there are some things that according to scripture are like wrong for every Christian, but there's many things not talked about, and on those things that leaves you up to what you feel convicted about, like you are truly free. And some Christians, I feel like some Christians are uncomfortable with that because it's much easier if there's just an answer that's right for everyone. But it's not always like that sometimes. And our brains all work in different ways and we are affected by different things in different ways, and that's why we have different convictions. So, and again, the main thing talk about this, I think some people might think, oh, this is just someone trying to justify listening to secular music, which, I mean, I guess it probably sounds like that, but I probably, even after this video, I probably still won't allow myself to listen to secular music for some time. But I just want to say, like, you're not wrong if you don't feel convicted about it, and if there's nothing wrong with the songs you're listening to. And I think we as Christians need to learn to respect each other's convictions if there's not, if biblically there is room for that. So, yeah, that's all. Goodbye.